So fresh from a Category 2 IB Diploma Language and Literature workshop, just wanted to share a sort of visual mapping exercise assisted by Prezi that I think represents pretty good consolidation of some of the shared thinking about the pedagogical support provided for the new individual oral task, related to the broader place of pedagogical scaffolding in the new curriculum design, where there's a lot of new language, of concepts, of lines of inquiry, of global issues for us as students, or indeed as teachers and indeed our students, to get our heads around. And particularly for the students, if you go with my somewhat contrived analogy of the penguin, when they're sitting in the lonely, exposed, possibly cold place of the individual oral task, the new curriculum can seem quite daunting, but there's a really solid foundation if we use it appropriately, upon which this can be built. Essentially what we're asking all students to do is what we've always done in good language and literature analysis, to comment on how concrete elements of the text produce or affect meaning about the world, a debatable element. In the individual oral task, this just has the added specification that comment about how the text produces or affects meaning in the world relates to a global issue, the debatable element. And the scaffolding for this, at the deepest level, begins with the areas of exploration: readers, writers and text, time and space, and intertextuality. If we backwards by design from the assessment criteria for this task, or indeed the whole course, it's really important to remember that the areas of exploration are just entry points to conceptual thinking about text. They're totally non-essential. They're just a very well-intended recommendation of how we can help students, and indeed ourselves as teachers, to find entry points to conceptual thinking about the text. The mid-level of scaffolding, the 7 concepts, acts in a similar way. Again, if we backwards by design, they're also just entry points, totally non-essential. We don't need to be prescriptively teaching this language, rather just use it as reference, non-explicit kind of entry points to thinking about this assessment. More targeted scaffolding is offered by the lines of inquiry. And if we go to the TSM, the teacher support material provided by the IB, it's a really useful section, which can be quite hard to find. I think I'll post a link to it beneath this video. You'll need to log in via your IB credentials and so forth. Get those from your IB coordinator if you haven't already. But once you find it, this is a really, really rigorous scaffolding resource. If you scroll down the page, you'll find it takes you through step by step, moving from a broader framing of a line of inquiry to something much more specific in the way that the assessment criteria asks for this task. But this section that I've got here is worth taking note of. Students may arrive at their global issue for a variety of pathways. It's just one, the section I've got highlighted in blue there, it's just one of a number of suggested pathways. It's just pedagogical scaffolding, again, more targeted than the other elements we've just considered, the areas of exploration or the 7 concepts. It's again just another element of pedagogical scaffolding to use as suits our environment, as we see fit. And then it's a pretty direct line from here to the tasks that we're asking of the students, to comment on how concrete element of the text produces, or concrete elements of the text produce or affect meaning about the global issues. So yeah, hopefully that's been helpful in getting under the surface of learning in the new IO. I'll post a link up to both the Prezi and the scaffolding in the TSM. The pervasive kind of understanding we took away from the workshop, particularly this section, was don't be intimidated by this proliferation of new language in the new curriculum guide. It's just surface level stuff that's intended to support us in helping those students be ready for the assessment tasks. And certainly if you as a teacher are a bit intimidated by this proliferation of new language, think about the student's situation. Certainly don't overload them with front-ending a lot of this underpinning pedagogical support. Use it to the extent it's going to be useful in getting them ready for that assessment task.